What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel. And I'm back with yet another album review, and today I'm talking about something definitely a lot more underground. I am talking about the debut offering from Cult of Orpist, Attack of the Zombie Cans. This also came out on September 6th, this time on Brutal Records. And like I said, this is the band's debut full-length offering, and this is a Greek death thrash band, I guess you could say. It almost was like the perfect middle ground between death metal and thrash metal. However, I would say this is definitely far more thrash lenient. I would say about 60% thrash, 40% death metal. And, well, let's go ahead and talk about these songs. So, after the kind of needless intro, the Lurking Invasion, which was mostly like cheesy horror ambience, we get into the true opening track, the title track, Attack of the Zombie Cans, and right off the rip, you get a sense of what this album is going to be for the most part. Gritty, like death metal sounding guitars in terms of the guitar tone, but musically it's definitely more on the thrash side. And the vocals, I gotta admit, like the vocals almost across the board on this album kind of sound like if Kirk Windstein from Crowbar sang for a death thrash band, because it has that like real anguish sound to it, but yet it's still very energetic. And of course with this track, you know, it's traditional thrash riffing with like death metal sounding guitars, big breakdowns, even some nice dive bombs and shred. Like overall, it's a good time. Then we get into On the Verge of Insanity, and this one almost feels like a hybrid between Bolt Thrower and Exodus. You get these big double-time stomps that feel directly lifted from Bolt Thrower, but then you get these like kind of punky D beats with Exodus-style riffing on top. And then Chainsaw Justice, which, awesome title. I wouldn't be shocked if there's a band out there called Chainsaw Justice. If not, I might take it or somebody else will. But Chainsaw Justice, like, it starts off with a real nasty, like, Death Doom riff that just creeps on your back. Like, it's like a bug that crawls on your back. It's like, ugh, it's so nasty, but yet awesome. And it sounds kind of close to Autopsy a little bit. And it's kind of that way for the first part of the track. And then it gets back into being more thrash. And I would say definitely close to Sodom, which I would say is one of the big comparison bands for Cult of Orpist. And then there's even a little slight sleazy quality to it. Like there are times where some of the riffs in the bridge kind of get a little bit sleazy, like a little dirtier sounding. And of course when it comes to lead work, it's for the most part like dive bombs, but you do get some pretty cool shred on this track. The song Humiliation, this one I feel is kind of closer to like straight up death metal. Like you get death metal grooves at the beginning that kind of remind me a little bit of bands like Obituary or even Benediction, but then you do get some more of those like punky D beats, but the riff work kind of made me think of like early Entombed, early Dismember, like that punky Swedish death metal vibe, even though there's no Boss HM2 tone on these guitars. Then we get to Post-Murder Suicide. After like an ambient melodic beginning, it turns into straight up thrash, again back to the Exodus vibes. And I gotta say, when they break down into some of these grooves and chugs, they know how to groove and chug, and this song definitely had some of the best grooves and chugs on the entire album. Now, one of the most unique tracks is BTS. The opening riff and rhythm was bordering on grindcore a little bit, and I would say kind of close to something you would have heard Terrorizer do. But after it stops for a moment, it then turns into straight up thrash, and dare I say, the riff work kind of reminds me of old Metallica a little bit, like Master of Puppets and Justice for All era, like those like super fast downstroke riffs. You pretty much get a lot of that on this track, and of course some of the big chugs come alive on here. But then you get into, honestly, the most unique song on the album, and the longest track of the album at over 6 minutes, with Homage. It starts off really thrashy, but then it turns into, for pretty much the rest of the song, like a doomy sludge song. And honestly, and going back to what I was talking about, how the vocalist sounded like Kirk Winstein, this song kind of reminds me a little bit of Crowbar. And there's even some like cool harmonies on the guitars, like a harmonized lead and even a melodic lead, which I thought were really, really tasty. And then the closing track, Total War, which, not counting the intro track, the shortest track of the album at over 2 minutes, but it is a savage 2 minutes. Like, it's just balls to the wall, thrash, punk laden energy, shredding guitars, pretty much the whole shebang. Now, as far as the production goes, it's raw and it's gritty, but for the most part, the mix is decent. Although I will say, especially on the title track, there are moments where the toms almost sound like bongos. So they just sound very small in the mix, which I thought was a kind of a detriment. And then, of course, I would say some of the songs do kind of run into one another because there's not too much identity going on. Like I said, it's just basically death metal sounding guitars, but more thrash oriented songwriting. You do get like individual standout moments on some of these songs, but for the most part, it's just kind of going for one mode, which is just thrash it up, which, believe me, I do love. And thankfully, they do vary it up a little bit with different ideas, whether it be going for the more punky side or even in a song like Homage being more doomy and sludgy. But yeah, for the most part, a lot of the songs do kind of run into one another. And then the biggest problem that I had, funny enough, in the song Homage, it just cuts off abruptly at the end, which I thought, man, it was such a great song, and it's still maybe the best song on the album, but I just hate that it just cuts off and ends abruptly. But overall, for the most part, this was still a really good album. I will give this 3.5 out of 5. I think for a debut offering from a new band in the world of death thrash, pretty cool stuff right here. No complaints otherwise. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thank you for watching. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.
Thank you for your patronage.